Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is draw our cockatoo, and I'm going to use a pen just so it stands out for you, but you guys should be using your pencil, and you're going to hold it at the end of your pencil, not right down here. Nice and loose, loose lines, lots of search lines first. So we're going to start off with a nice big circle, and then we're going to have a look at this line here, which meets the edge of the page about there. So we can draw a nice line like that, and then we're going to just draw the front part of our cockatoo's body, which is a bit of a curve as well. And you can see in the reference, and this is why we use a reference, that the cockie's head is a little bit, has got a bit of a curve at the front, like this. And that helps us work out where the beak is going to go. So that is the basic shape of our cockie's head. He has an eye about there. And then he has his nice little crest. It's just off to the side. So that is the only part of the drawing that we bother to do with our pencil. And I've got one here that I did before, and I'm going to use a technique where we use oil pastels, and we're going to colour the cockatoo with pastels, and then we're going to put white paint on the top, and we're going to scratch a pattern into it. So to make sure this works really well, you just need to make sure your pastels go on really heavy. So I'm going to leave a spot for the eye, and you might say, hey, I don't want to do a blue cockatoo, but that's fine because you can switch colours. And I'm going to give you a little demonstration, and then I'm going to speed the video up so you don't have to watch me colour the whole thing. You just want to make sure your pastels go on your paper hard enough that you can't see any white paper. For example, you don't want to put them on their side and go like that because you get too much paper in between. You want lots of nice, rich colour on your cockie. And you could pick just one colour to have as the colour underneath if you want. But I'm just going to stop my video so I can speed it up so you don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, once you have your cockatoo covered with oil pastel and you've done the beak and the crest, we're not going to paint over the top of the beak and the crest, but we're going to paint over the top of everything else with some white paint. So we only need a thin layer, and we don't want any big blobs. So you're just going to paint straight over the top of the oil pastel in nice smooth layers, just like this. With your paintbrush, stroke and lift. Don't push it back and forth, stroke and lift. And you might see a little bit of the pastel underneath, but that doesn't matter. Nice thin layer all over. And you can see a bit of the pastel underneath, but that doesn't matter. And just make sure when you finish that you put your paintbrush in the water. Otherwise the paint dries in the bristles and then it wrecks our brushes. So our next step is a bit of fun, and you can do this while your paint is still a bit wet, and you can just use the end of your paintbrush and you can scratch a pattern into the paint. So you can take off a little bit of paint or a lot of paint. So your cockatoo's also got a nice big wing. You might like to draw that on, and you'll see that scratching away that top layer of paint, you can see the pastel from underneath it. It's definitely best to do this when the paint is a little bit wet. This works best with black paint. You can do it with white, but the white's a bit thicker. There is one thing I forgot to tell you guys to do, and that is when you paint the eye, paint all the way up to the black bit, because this is a fun part to scratch away as well. And if you look on your reference, you can see that there's a few rings around the eye. So you can just use the end of your brush to put those on, just like that. And then the last step is to use your paint and paint the background. And you can use whatever colours you want, but I tend to like it when I stick to just 2 or 3 colours. But I know we've got some creative people in the class. Who knows what they'll come up with. Make sure you put plenty of water in your paint tray, spin your brush in circles, and get them nice and wet before you start to paint. And I'm going to start with my light green. And you can go all the way up to the edge of your pastel, and it will never cover your pastel. It will always resist where the pastel is. Putting a little bit of blue, because I would like a nice background, just plain like that. And this paint will dry quite quickly. So once he's dry, he's almost finished, but I just want to make him stand out against his background a little bit more. And his beak is really dark, but the rest of him is very light. So I'm just going to get my black pastel, and I'm just going to go around the edges, but I'm not drawing really hard like this. I'm just doing lots of light little lines just to give his outlines a little bit more definition, just making them stand out a little bit more. Go around his head, around his eye perhaps, and maybe just a little bit on his crest, just so we can see him against the background. Done. All right, now it's your turn.